Hello and welcome back to A View from Brussels. My name is Brandy Miller and I'm the editorial director of the Watcher Post EU. Today in the studio I have MEP Brando Benifei. Brando, pleasure to have you here today.
Thank you very much.
So you are the chair of the Parliament's delegation with relations to the U.S., which is quite hot in the news today.
Absolutely, yes.
So for our audience, I'm sure they'll be very eager to hear from you. Could you frame how the last few weeks have been and why they are particularly tense and what you're expecting?
Well, I will say what I just said in these days to the US ambassador to the EU. I said it very clearly that these last weeks have been really a low point of our relations because the threats towards Greenland were really a shocking moment for many Europeans. Now I see things getting for the better on a more calm context, and there is a resuming of the dialogue, and there is a better climate. But this situation told us that we really need to have Europe ready to be more autonomous, to be more able to demand respect in the crucial transatlantic relationship. Being still strong in this transatlantic alliance is very important for Europe for many reasons, economic, cultural, of security. But we need to build more resilience and autonomy to be in a better position to present our interests and resist certain directions that we have seen coming from President Trump that created a lot of discomfort.
Naturally. And on the discomfort, would you say it's a temporary crisis or something that you see as more systemic and potentially a break with one of the EU's closest allies?
Well, I think the point is to be taken seriously. Is it temporary or, I mean, a more permanent change? In my view, there is a tendency that might stay, that is of the US to not really consider anymore, for various reasons, also external reasons, the international organizations, the international global order that we had until today as functional to their interests. So there might be a longer term impact on the idea of a rule-based world order. Probably we need to rebuild a new one. The old one of the last decades is now falling apart, and this might stay as a consequence of this situation. The specific relations between EU and US that have had highs and lows in the last year especially, I think they can get better than it is today when there is more clarity on respect for territorial sovereignty of the EU, and there is some finalization of agreements that we are still discussing for various reasons, including the trade deal.
Yeah, which has been currently put on ice when postponed a decision, which I do understand will be discussed next week. Do you have any comments on that in particular?
Yeah. Well, I can say that we have a clear indication politically that to resume the work and put it to a result, so voting on these files that are connected to the deal, that specifically would entail reducing to zero the tariffs of industrial goods and of some quotas of agricultural goods coming from US towards Europe. So it will be a vote in favor of US, we can say. They need to be done a few conditions. One is that there is a clarity that is still not there from the US side on one very crucial point for us, which is the trade on steel and aluminium, because these raw materials are involved in many finished products, and today there is a confusion about the tariffs to be applied on these products coming from EU towards the US. In fact, in theory, they should be taxed at 15% tariffs, but in fact, they end up being taxed at 50%, like the raw steel and aluminium. So there is a problem with the so-called derivatives of steel and aluminium. This is a very important thing because it has a quite significant impact on many sectors of the economy and is creating a lot of problems for many industries in Europe that want to export towards the US. And then we also want clarity on the fact that there are safeguards so that if there is an invasion of Greenland or there are actions of coercion against the EU, we can suspend the deal. And finally, we want also to have a termination time so that we can renegotiate the deal. It can be 18 months, it can be the end of a Trump term. So we are still discussing, but we want the time frame to be clear. It cannot be a permanent deal, but it needs to have an end time so that we can see if it's been applied correctly and if we need to renegotiate.
Correct. And well, we'll all be watching that next week, as well as we might have some follow-up questions for you on how that is discussed in the Parliament. But I want to pivot a bit more to other dossiers on which you're very active when you are a key voice on digital and AI policy in particular. So if we're sticking on the discussion of EU-US trade and digital tension as well, we do see digital policy being a flashpoint. So according to you, is the EU prepared to hold its line, even if that comes at the cost of political capital with the US?
My opinion is that unlike the issue of the green policies, where there has been a big divide inside the political discussion in EU, between the governments, between the political groups, the parliamentary groups in the European Parliament, unlike the green policies, on the digital policies, there is more cohesion. There is more conviction that we should resist the push to abandon our legislation, the idea of regulating the digital space, the platforms, and also the AI. So I think that although we are discussing some simplification measures, some omnibuses, I've been doing it today also before coming here, I can say that there is more cohesion on these topics at European level with political parties, with governments, that we do not want to abandon our digital legislation. We can adapt it, but the pressures we see from US, we are broadly resisting them because we think that we need to have a more regulated and fair digital space than just a situation where there are no rules at all.
Naturally. And that does bring me to my next question about the EU striking a credible balance between protecting fundamental rights and staying competitive, namely in regards to the US and China. So from your perspective, has the EU achieved that, or is the EU achieving that?
In my opinion, Europe is still not achieving that. And the reason is very political. It's not technical, it's not linked to single dossier, but it's a broader political issue, which is the fact that the EU is politically still too divided, too fragmented, while you have competition on these specific topics with giants that are very united. United States, China. I mean, United States is a federal country. So you have states in the United States that do different things. In fact, I am in contact with several state-level governments and legislatures that are doing legislation on digital at state level in US. So there is some fragmentation, but in the end, the federal level keeps more united. And China is a more unitarian state, while EU is only loosely coordinated, to be very frank. We have legislation sometimes that is in theory European, but then it's applied and enforced by national authorities, and this creates uncertainty, fragmentation. We don't have a common financial market at European level that can help leverage more resources for technological startups. So, in my opinion, there is a broader issue if we want to be competitive on digital, not only of simplifying, reducing contradictions where there are on our legislation, which is always important and must be taken seriously, but it's not sufficient. If we think we just slash some laws, we will be competitive, we are lunatics. We need instead a clear commitment for more common initiative at European level, more determination to consider being competitive on AI as an objective of the EU together, which entails taking certain decisions. While today, unfortunately, we are still not there because there is still a too short-termism approach for our governments, and the Commission is doing what it can with the resources it has, with the Apply AI strategy, with the AI continent plan, with the AI factories. These are all programs to support more capability for the AI ecosystem of the EU. But the dimension of that is still limited because the EU has a 1% GDP common budget, which is small compared to, again, USA, China. So we still need to do a lot.
So then on that topic of AI, as you mentioned, and the call for AI sovereignty within the EU, do you see a realistic path forward at this moment? Or as you're saying, there are a lot of constraints vis-a-vis the competitors?
I see a lot of constraints, but also the situation we have globally with all these tensions, not only with US, but also China and Russia still a big threat to our security, also cyber security. So in all this context, I think that these constraints can be overcome with political will by the leaders and by our peoples. So I'm cautiously optimistic that the situation we are in will unblock certain reservations to actually embrace a more coordinated, more efficient and more determining European approach on developing our AI ecosystem and what we call in the European context the Eurostack, so the stack of European sovereign technologies, from cloud to connectivity to platforms. It will not happen in one day, but I see the path that has been opened. We need to go down that path with determination.
Thank you. And if we do take a look, take a step back on the DSA, which has been enforced and in full force quite recently in terms of political legislation. Are you encouraged by how it is playing out thus far, or do you worry that the EU is still in reactive mode? And with this, you see the EU also being in reactive mode with regards to AI?
Well, in my opinion, the DSA should be applied with more objective of correcting certain behaviors by the platforms that are against our principles, rather than only looking for fining and making them pay money. Because I think this is something that is not in contradiction. You can do both, but we have been doing, in my view, too much fining and less determination in asking for correction in concrete terms of behaviors that we don't like on spreading misinformation, on abusing of privacy, or manipulation of data of the users.
And if we are to project ourselves in 10 to 20 years from now, what type of digital society would you hope to see in Europe?
Well, I hope a society where we didn't fall into an extreme protectionist context. We do not break with the US, with other parts of the world. I want to be clear about this. We need to be strong, but not closed. But we also have our sovereign technologies, and we have more AI and digital literacy. We need more investment on learning by our citizens on how to be conscious digital citizens and workers. We still need to get there. Some member states have been doing important things. Finland, Estonia, France a bit, but we need much more of that, because we need our population of all ages and all backgrounds to be more educated on how to get the best out of this new digital world.
Well, thank you for putting that forward, and I do hope that that is our future indeed, as a European citizen myself. Thank you, Mr. Benifei, for being here in the studio, and thank you to our audience for joining us, and see you next time.